The BFG, Chapter 5. The BFG. The giant picked up the trembling Sophie with one hand and carried her across the cave and put her on the table. Oh, now he's really going to eat me, Sophie thought. The giant sat down and stared hard at Sophie. He had truly enormous ears. Each one was as big as the wheel of a truck, and he seemed to be able to move them inwards and outwards from his head as he wished. "I is hungry!" the giant boomed. He grinned, showing massive square teeth. The teeth were very white and very square, and they sat in the mouth like huge slices of white bread. But please don't eat me, Sophie stammered. "Ha ha 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 ha!" The giant let out a bellow of laughter. "Oh, just 'cause I's a giant, you think I's a man-gobbling cannibal? Oh, you is about right. Giants is all cannibally and murderful, and they does gobble up human beings. Oh, he's in giant country now. Giants is everywhere around. Out there, as there's the famous bone-crunching giant. Bone-crunching giant crunches up 2 whopsy whiffling human beings for supper every night. Noise is ear bursting. Noise of crunching bones goes crackety-crack for miles around." "Ouch," Sophie said. "Oh, bone-crunching giant only gobbles human beings from Turkey. Every night, Bone Cruncher is galloping off to Turkey to gobble Turks." Sophie's sense of patriotism was suddenly so bruised by this remark that she became quite angry. "Why Turks? What's wrong with the English?" she blurted out. "Oh, bone-crunching giant says Turks is tasting, ever so much juicier and more scrumptious. Bone Cruncher says Turkish human beings has a glamourly flavour. He says Turks from Turkey is tasting of turkey." "Well, I suppose they would," Sophie said. "Of course they would. Every human being is diddly and different. Some scrumdiddly-umptious, and some is ucky slush. Greeks is all full of ucky slush. No giant is ever eating Greeks, ever." "Why not?" "Well, Greeks from Greece is all tasting greasy." "I imagine that's possible too," Sophie said. She was wondering, with a bit of a tremble, what all this talking about eating people was leading up to. Whatever happened, she simply must play along with this peculiar giant and smile at his jokes. But were they jokes? Perhaps the great brute was just working up an appetite by talking about food. And there they are, in conversation. "As I am saying, all human beings is having different flavours. Human beings from Panama is tasting very strong of hats." "Why hats?" "Oh, you's not very clever," the giant said, moving his grey ears in and out. "I thought all human beings is full of brains, but your head is emptier than a barn dungle." "Do you like vegetables?" Sophie asked, hoping to steer the conversation towards a slightly less dangerous kind of food. "Oh, you's trying to change the subject. We's having an interesting babblement about the taste of the human bean. The human bean is not a vegetable." "Oh, but the bean is a vegetable." "Not the human bean. A human bean has 2 legs and a vegetable has no legs at all." Sophie didn't argue anymore. The last thing she wanted to do was to make the giant cross. "The human bean is coming in dillions of different flavours. For instance, human beings from Wales is tasting very whooshy of fish. There's something very fishy about Wales." "You mean Wales, W-H-A-L-E-S. Wales, the country, W-A-L-E-S, is something quite different." "Wales is Wales. Don't gobble funk around with words. I will now give you another example. Human beings from Jersey has a most disgustable woolly tickle on the tongue. Human beings from Jersey is tasting of cardigans," like jumpers made of wool. You mean jerseys? Sophie said. Oh, you're once again gobble-funking. Don't do it. This is a serious and snitching subject. May I continue? Oh, please do. Danes from Denmark is tasting ever so much of dogs. Of course. They taste of Great Danes. Wrong! Cried the giant, slapping his thigh. Danes from Denmark is tasting doggy because they is tasting of Labradors. Then, what do the people of Labrador taste of? Sophie asked. Ha! Danes! Great Danes! Aren't you getting a little mixed up? Oh, I's a very mixed up giant. But I does do my best. And I's not nearly as mixed up as the other giants. I know one who gollops all the way to Wellington for his supper. Wellington? Where is Wellington? Ah, your head's full of squash flies. Wellington's in New Zealand. The human beings in Wellington has an especially scrumdiddlyumptious taste. So says the welly-eating giant. What do the people of Wellington taste of? Ha! Boots! Boots! The giant said. Of course, I should have known. Sophie decided that this conversation had now gone on long enough. If she was going to be eaten, she'd rather get it over and done with right away than be kept hanging around any more. What sort of human beings do you eat? She asked, trembling. Ha! Me! Shouted the giant, his mighty voice making the glass jars rattle on their shelves. Oh, me gobbling up human beings? Oh, this I never. The others, yes. All the others is gobbling them up every night, but not me. I's a freaky giant. I's a nice and jumbly giant. I's the only nice and jumbly giant in giant country. I is the big friendly giant. I is the BFG. Now what's your name? My name is Sophie, Sophie said, hardly daring to believe the good news that she had just heard.